The simple fact is that little bit of information can change your whole view of what is really the major issue here now.
Exactly what you said. A lot of people, my age or younger, maybe a little bit older, they have never experienced anything like this. Mm-hmm. And so they don't really understand the effects of what they're doing. They don't understand, I'm used to, there's still things that my kids are going to grow up and they're used to it because they've had it from an early age and I didn't. But as far as, we haven't always been able to get into a metal tube and fly across the country. Mm-hmm. Like, it's amazing what we can do. And so in a lot of ways, we've come so far in a lot of ways that we don't really know how to handle that. And I think that's the other thing is not only it's a heart check for us as far as what's authentic, but really it kind of exposes real quick, have we really come all that far? Yeah. 2 days ago, things seemed, limitless, or 2 weeks ago, things seemed limitless. And now all of a sudden, these constraints are placed on us. It really changes things.
It's amazing how a little bit of information can totally alter your perspectives,
Well, I think the whole thing kind of illustrates where our culture is at. You mentioned the whole thing with Kobe Bryant. I had a conversation with a friend, and I think, at least in my generation, that's the first kind of sports icon legend that was, we would say taken too early or life was cut short. But I think it illustrates where our culture is at, is we live in a culture that spends so much time trying to prevent this type of stuff from happening. Mm-hmm. And we almost think that we're immune to it. Like, if we just get enough knowledge, if we get enough this, and we keep working up, as you said, and the knowledge is multiplying quicker and quicker and quicker. And then all of a sudden, when that is, in an instant changed, it's kind of like a false idol, really.
Yeah, I think that not only in history have we seen pandemics, many of them. I think in my own lifetime, I've lived through several different things that have gone through the world and come through this country that people came to understand that these are just part of the cycle. Today, we've largely eliminated those things, but that's the thing about viruses and bacteria. They have an amazing way of recreating themselves in new forms, adapting to new situations. If I'm coughing and sneezing and otherwise emitting, then maybe there's something to be concerned with, but just simply to become so terrified, it's irrational.
Yeah. Well, kind of closing up, through this whole series, I think, whether people know it or not, you spend the entire year just looking at the world news and what's going on around here and kind of see, and then you present this series of kind of looking at what's going on around us. Where do you think this fits, or how do you think people should look at this?
I think this is a blip. I think that they're designed to make us more aware of the times in which we live and of our own mortality and our need for Him. I think if it brings people to faith and other things of that nature, I think that's marvelous. For me, and personally, I look at this and saying, okay, we've never done anything like this before. Where you and I are sitting in an auditorium with nobody in it, talking as if we're surrounded by a crowd. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think over the past week, a couple of things that have come to mind. One is especially, I think I was amazed, I think it was from Wednesday to Thursday, just that short amount of time, how quickly things all changed. Mm-hmm. And I got to thinking about some of the things that you've said in previous parts of this series when you talk about superheroes or just things like that. And sometimes when things are going good, we think that things are so far away. But as I saw the different reactions, and if you actually took time, most people would advise you to not go online and see all these different reactions. But if you did that, it just kind of hit me, man. Like, if things are like this, and this is how things end, how quickly would people jump on the side of somebody who just automatically showed up and could solve it like that? Or all you had to do was just worship this, or all you had to do was just receive this cure. And it just got me like, wow.
Yeah.
Things can change in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned that idea of get our attention, and then I was listening to a podcast the other weekend, and they used this words that I just love the way they phrase it. They just said, we think everything, all of our advances in knowledge and everything is so great, but He's going to graciously allow that to fail in order that we would turn to Him.
Yeah.
And so...
that's probably a good explanation of what we're doing here today.
That's the idea, but I think it's this kind of stuff that something like this we don't get a chance to do. Maybe maybe that'll change as we move forward. But I think to be able to have kind of that living room session, to be able to say, well, what about this? This is my situation. How does that apply? Yeah. And really help people to work through that. And I really think that's an opportunity that we have now smaller communities and really discuss these questions and really kind of flesh out those personal experiences as to how this works with the goal, obviously, of submitting to the Word. What role do we have to play in their lives, or what role do we have to shine a light in this just kind of time when people kind of see it as just nothing but darkness.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your word. We're going to see how this pans out. But I think that the other part that you kind of touched on that really is we've probably seen people maybe for the first time express panic, really. And I think that really can have an effect too. It reminded me of reading a series of books that I got from my son, and I just thought it was really the story's been well told. I can't finish the story because I haven't finished the book yet. Okay. But I'm getting there. But it was just they were in a situation, and they were given the advice from this godlike figure who said, be careful what lens you view the world through. And so it's a kid's story, and so they get in this situation, and in the first level of the challenge that they're in, they find these glasses and they have the gold rim, and it allows them to see things clearly. They don't see the size of the monster or the danger that they're in. And so they pass that one, and they get into the next level, and they try to apply the same thing, but they pull up a different lens. They pull up this glasses that have these black frames, and all of a sudden, everything just becomes magnified. Now the danger looks so much bigger and things like that. And it just spoke so loud and clear. Yeah. That makes all the difference in the world.
Now to the growing number of hoaxes popping up online. Misinformation is spreading fast.
You see, and the problem is how do you distinguish between something that's true and false based upon whose perspective? How do you talk about whether something is a fact or a fiction, or whether it's a reality or a fantasy, or whether it's right or wrong? You go on the internet and you'll find arguments about everything that you can think of, with people taking various sides of the argument, claiming that they have the only true representation of that issue. And what's led to is that we began to have exaggerated fears to the point of hysteria and paranoia. I mean, think about it for a moment. Why would people fill shopping carts full of toilet paper? Because somehow in their mind they think that the supply chain is going to be cut off, and all the experts saying all you're doing is creating a false shortage. Because they don't produce that much toilet paper, because generally people don't use that much toilet paper. And I see a big dip afterwards when people get over this few weeks of this pandemic and they have all this toilet paper. Then they're going to have to readjust their production because so many people really don't need that much toilet paper. It's kind of being blown so far out of proportion. But what it does, it tends to reinforce our biases, even to the point of bigotry. We begin to see people as singular entities, and we see them as being either good or evil, right or wrong, falsehood or liar. We begin to categorize people into these ways that destroys human relationship. And at some point, we begin to waver between apathy and panic, so that the push and pull of all of this begins to drive people so crazy that what happens is our view of reality actually becomes distorted. Well, I don't want to cast stones, but I feel like the way that so many people are responding, one physician put it really well. He said, the problem isn't just the pandemic, it's the panic-demic that's coming as a result. And I think it's a true observation. Well, the lack of clarity creates this confusion. And so I think that that's what we all struggle with. There's just so many things that aren't clear. What exactly does it mean? And it leads to erratic behaviors. If everybody's rushing to buy toilet paper, what's my conclusion? Toilet paper must be critical. And so people like lemmings chase after the toilet paper. And rarely, like you say, they're reacting. They're not stepping back and going, okay, what's the deeper lesson here? But I find that for people who are just living for their place in this world, anything that threatens that progress is the enemy that needs to be destroyed. And that's where you end up with this very predatorial, vicious culture that tramples people under its feet in order to save its own. So it's scary times.
Yeah, I think that a couple of things. I think one thing is it's times like this that really expose what's underneath. As you said, growing up, you saw a lot of people fake it, and I think if we're honest with ourselves, a lot of times we know how to fake it. We know how to do it, and when something like this hits, it really just strips all the fakeness away. I mean, it's really hard to fake when you're trying to pummel someone in the supermarket so that you can get the last item.
The World Wide Web was free of charge from the beginning on. That might have had something to do with how the internet swept and changed the world in such a short time.
Well, we're getting to this point in just a few months when, for the first time, more than half the world will be online. We're calling it a 50-50 moment.
People hoping to separate fiction from fact. The very idea of what the objective facts of our world are really up for debate right now.
Well, some people you're just never going to reach or never going to convince. That the people who are willing to take a critical or a skeptical look at something are the ones that you need to reach.
From those humble and somewhat factually challenged roots grew a great tree of knowledge.
This is knowledge in depth. Large, authoritative essays.
Considered by many to be the definitive resource of information over the years.
Just think of it. It's a device by which all the knowledge, or most of the knowledge of the world at any one given time, is collected in one place.
But there were also challenging times for the company. The Great Depression of the 1930s, for example.
Folks did not have disposable income, a lot of it to spend on encyclopedias. Britannica had to find a way to stay relevant.
Enter the Answer Girls, an elite corps of women who would research and answer any question a Britannica owner might have.
So you would write your question on a postcard, attach one of these stamps, and then Britannica, in return, one of the women from the research center would type up and research up to a 10,000-word report as an answer to your question.
Reference, Miss Watson.
In fact, Katharine Hepburn's character in Desk Set,
The Old Farmer's Almanac for this, if not U.S. Weather.
is said to be modeled on the Answer Girls director.
This is from the Bible.
The hope and idea, really, being that now, maybe more than ever, facts actually do matter, and not all information is created equal.
So you guys are really trying to sort of fight the good fight of putting real information into the world.
Absolutely. We're trying to surface and bring to people. We're not going to wait for folks to come to us.